Hello there, my name is Al Wu. Although I was not born in Canada, I came to Canada as a small child and grew up in Canada. I want to share with you a story about the contributions of a particular group of CBCs, Canadian-born Chinese. They were born in Canada at the time when all the Chinese were not recognized as Canadian citizens. The Canadian forces fought in World War II against Germany, Italy, and Japan. The Chinese who were born here, the CBCs, wanted to serve Canada. They were mostly in their late teens, early 20s. They want to volunteer to fight for their country in which they were born. But when they tried to enlist, the Canadian government said, no, we don't want you. They came to Canada as railroad workers, miners, and they served and earned their trust and their patriotism and their loyalty to Canada. And the CBCs contributed to that legacy. In 1947, the Canadian government granted all the Chinese in Canada full rights of citizenship to equality, inclusiveness, and diversity.
Hi, my name is Esther, and my grandfather came to Canada when he was very young, and he lived in Saskatchewan, where they started a restaurant and cafe next to the Legion, which serviced, I guess, when they were building the railway.
Hi, my name is Tammy. I'm a mother of 3 sons, and I have 3 grandchildren, still married. I live in Burnaby, and I'm a dog walker, and I'm retired.
My name is Serena Lee. My father immigrated here from China, and then he met my mother in Victoria. And they decided to move to Vancouver because there's more opportunity than Victoria.
My name is Flora Wong, and I was born and raised in Vancouver. Went to school here. My father came to Canada in the 1930s and worked in the restaurant business. My mother was she is a Cantonese opera singer from China, and she came over to Canada, Vancouver, in specific in about 1940.
Hi, I'm Tana, and I'm married, and I love to travel, and I have 2 grandkids and 2 lovely daughters and 2 lovely son-in-laws.
My name is Lin Leong, and I was born in Vancouver to Chinese-born parents who came to Canada to seek their fortune. My parents were born in the 30s, and they went through the Depression, they went through World War II, and things were really tough.
I'm Tiara. I have 2 daughters and 2 grandchildren, and I'm still married, retired.
My name is Christina Lee. I was born in Vancouver over 70 years ago. My grandfather came because he was the second child, or the second son. And in traditional Chinese, the first son inherited everything. The second son didn't do anything else because the first son was responsible for the family. So he came and he immigrated here. He lived here for a few years before my grandmother finally came over. And that was in the years when my maternal grandmother still had bound feet.
Hi, my name is Tina. I have 2 sons, and I do volunteer work in Chinatown at the Chinatown Storytelling Center.
Our grandmother was 17 years old when she arrived in 1907. Grandmother was the second wife of Wang Wang Fong. Grandmother Chan Gai Oi is one of our earliest known Chinese Canadian women to be listed as a developer of a major Chinatown property.
They came to seek their fortune because things weren't great in their home country. And they didn't speak any English. They really didn't know anybody other than, oh yeah, they called Canada Gold Mountain. They thought they were going to be filthy rich. come here, work hard for a few years, and then you go home and everything will be great. And that wasn't the way it turned out.
My father was never sick a day in his life. And then when I was 14, he had a massive stroke. And he was paraplegic from the right-hand side, so we all had to do something. We physically took care of my father. We were very organized. Chinese people think are very logical and organized. So the first three brought home, took care of the house. My mother went out to work, bringing the money. The last three took care of my father, so we all had our shifts.
The CBCs, we did not have an easy time. That just because we're born in Gold Mountain, we're not that lucky, okay? We all have to work hard, very hard, to achieve. In fact, you say that we're survivors, okay?
It was a very difficult time and challenging times for our ancestors who came to Canada. The pioneers worked very, very hard, saved and sent back monies to their families to be cared for, in hopes that one day that they could send a son back to Canada. At that time, women were not allowed to come to Canada. Chinese here had to fight discrimination, prejudice, and pay the head tax.
My maternal grandfather hired Chinese workers for the canneries, and that's how they made their living. As they grew up, they became the first generation of Chinese to do anything. So my uncle was the first Chinese doctor in Victoria, but in those days they were not allowed to touch other than Chinese people.
Both my mom and dad, until they retired, worked 7 days a week. They ran a grocery store on Commercial Drive.
A lot of places did not employ Chinese, and when they do get hired, they don't get the best pay.
My parents didn't get high-paying jobs, and she said, "You can walk to school. It's not that far." She said, "We're not going to get bus fare for 6 kids to walk to school."
Going to Chinese school here to learn to read and write in Chinese. It was close to Chinatown, the schools, so we were only able to go to that up until we were maybe about 12 years old. It was only a matter of a couple of hours after the elementary school that we went to. We found that the circumstances were not good to learn there. The teacher spoke mostly in Chinese, and some of us did not speak Chinese.
The biggest challenge, I guess, is I never learned to speak Chinese. When being the youngest of 4, my parents wanted to I guess, integrate with everybody, so they started speaking English, and that's all that I can speak.
Usually Canadian-born Chinese, a little bit more difficult to speak with Chinese.
We go to school to learn English and to communicate. You come home and my father expected us to speak Chinese. So it's like 2 different worlds you're living in.
My younger years were spent in Chinatown, attending Chinese school, church, community centers, spending time with my grandmother who lived in Chinatown, and working at my father's produce company, which was Chow Produce.
At dinner time, we would talk about Chinese history. We walk in the door, we would speak Chinese. We walk out the door, we would speak English, because my father could not speak English. He came over in his 30s and from China, and in those days there's no such thing as teaching English as a second language. So he worked in Chinatown where everybody spoke Chinese. And in the 50s, Chinatown was very closed. It was Chinese. And then in the 60s, urban renewal came and tore down all the homes and expropriated all the homes and built these urban renewal projects. So you had a McLean project, Railway Housing Project. They displaced thousands of Chinese people that lived around the area.
And we were not very proud to be Chinese. Like even in our school system, our teachers would say, "Speak English." And on my report cards, they wrote, "Speak English with Lynn at home." So it didn't make us proud to be Chinese.
Sometimes it is unpleasant being a Canadian-born Chinese now. I was once asked what it feels like to be called a banana. Yellow on the outside, white on the inside.
They look and see what you are on the outside first is Oriental, not Canadian. I think people have no idea what a Canadian looks like.
They say, "What country are you from?" And I said, "I'm Canadian." "No, you're not." And I said, "Yes, I am. I was born here." I said, "I'm Canadian."
There was a lot of racism and prejudices, and it was more outright. For example, people would call Chinese people chink, and we knew that wasn't good. And my mother was always one to say, "Oh, just let it go. Don't fight back," because we're a minority, right?
But later on there, things got better, in midlife there, then we achieved what we tried to do, and we enjoyed life there. That things that it was not easy, but sometimes when you have to work for something, you enjoy it more. If things come too easy, you don't appreciate it.
And as I grew into an adult, just realized that, many people have the same struggle. And everybody wants to be accepted. And I think that's something that has influenced the way I work and deal with people, that we all want to be on the same team. And we always want to be included. And I think Canada has shifted. And I think we are much better, all of us, at including people and being aware that nobody wants to be left out.
I appreciate the diversity that we have, and because I grew up in a mixed neighborhood, so you realize that everybody has their own area, or not specialty, but they have their own culture, but they're willing to share.
I feel very fortunate to have been born here in Canada. I have the best of both worlds, Canadian culture and Chinese culture, a melting pot of two cultures.
The good thing about being of my Chinese heritage is I mentioned before that when we walked in the door, we spoke Chinese out of reverence and respect for my father. We walked out the door, we spoke English to respect our new culture, or what we would call our existing culture. And the good thing about that is I had brought it into my present and all through my 70 years of existence, is that you can appreciate both cultures. You don't have to choose one. And because you have more than one culture to know, it is easier for you to accept other cultures. It makes you more tolerant because you know what it was like to be judged as one color and open your mouth and be judged as another color.
Living amongst everybody else, I have tried to be white, and but I'm also proud to be Chinese. So it really is a mix, and it's a kind of a continuing journey of who I am.
Show.